Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, and this is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character and franchise over time. Per the usual, you know I always say this, we are in the middle of Season 3. I've been having some familiar faces returning, and I've been having some new faces appearing. And for today's episode, I am particularly excited to have the ever so iconic illustrator, program organizer, and show producer, John Bellotti Jr., joining me today. Hello, John. How are you?
Good. I have to say, your choice of words describing me is ridiculous. The iconic is really funny. I think of Madonna right away when I hear the word icon. I'm like, whoa,
I mean, if
iconic.
you want to be the Madonna of program organization, I say that's a great title to have.
I'll prefer Lady Gaga because I'm from Staten Island and she's from Queens, I believe, or Westchester. I think she's from the New York area, so I'll
As a
go with
little
Gaga.
monster, as
Yeah,
a
I'll
little
go.
monster, that makes me very happy.
Yeah, I'll go with Gaga. I know people that know her, so I'm more comfortable with the Gaga.
The recent time I went to New York, I went to her family's restaurant at like 11 a.m.
Yeah.
And I just sat there eating like pasta, being like, oh my god, if she walks in here, my life will be made.
That's awesome.
But speaking of that area, like we have a very huge and exciting event coming up, Kaiju Brooklyn too,
Yeah,
right?
we do.
So let's talk about that for a second. Like, how are you feeling? Are you like you are the mastermind behind Kaiju Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Like, where are you at? Like, how are things going as it nears us on the horizon?
A little crazed than last year. It's a bigger show, and last year, and I'll get into this later, like the hows and whys the show came to be. But last year I wasn't working due to the Hollywood strikes because that's my day job is in Hollywood. So I had all this time. I was like, I can do anything I want, and I'll make a whole goddamn convention. This year's a little different. I'm back at work, and we did it this time in the spring as opposed to October, early October, I believe it was October. Well, the date's behind me. In September, there's really no holidays. There's nothing going on. May, I had my mom's birthday and then Mother's Day, literally in the same weekend. We had a food fest we had tickets for. We had all these things like every weekend we had something going on. So it's like, I'm trying to do Kaiju Brooklyn stuff and work and all these family things that are going on at the same time. And it's like, but yeah, it's
Oh,
crunch time. I still have to do some more packing. That's why my futon is a wreck because I have a bunch of shirts I got to pack for my inventory. But that's really the last big thing. So it's crunch time. Just a lot of things that are going on, a lot of moving parts, a lot of friends coming into town. So yeah, it's usually the most stressful part of it. But
stress keeps us young, in my opinion.
yeah, and collagen. I noticed collagen keeps us pretty young. Eating lots of olive oil and avocado, really good for the skin.
It's great. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. No, like I know it's been causing a lot of hype. Like people are really excited about Kaiju Brooklyn 2. I mean, yeah, like last year was the first year of it, but like it really set the stage, I think. It really kind of, set the tone for, expansion regarding another significant kaiju themed event that, and honestly there aren't enough of them, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
think there should be more. I don't think there has been one in that area unless I'm wrong. Like, has there been one in the area before Kaiju Brooklyn?
Ironically, G Fest started in New York as G Con in the 90s, and I went to it. And the two showrunners had a falling out, and they went to Chicago, and that's when it became G Fest. So we haven't had that anything kaiju related here since like 97 or 98, I think it was. That was the last time we had anything like that. We've had plenty of events. I mean, I could list off all the kaiju related stuff I've done in New York, especially within the last 5 or 6 years, but nothing like this whatsoever. And I just saw that there was a huge opening and I just took my shot and here we are ready to do our second
Wow.
show. Yeah.
And bam, here it is,
Here it
right?
is. Yeah. Year two. It's like, oh my
So,
God.
if you were to describe like what you're most excited about regarding Kaiju Brooklyn this
Um,
year, what would it be?
I'm excited about my t-shirt display because I'm going to have like 6 shirts for sale as opposed to 3. So that's a little overwhelming, but I'm excited about my t-shirt display. I'm doing my first panel ever. I'm excited
Really?
about that. Yeah, I'm excited just to see how the show grows, because there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of excitement, and sometimes you don't know what it's like until you get there to see people participating, people coming up, and like last year people were thanking me like I was some like 9/11 fireman hero or something. My guys, I just made an event, and they're like, thank you so much, we needed this, my life is complete. I'm like, whoa. Which is crazy. It's crazy to hear that when you're just doing something. Like I just do these things. Like I do
Like
these
the
things.
ramifications of
Yes.
It's
Yes.
interesting that you mentioned that, because I feel like, I don't know about you, but like as I've gotten older, like most of my space creating has been online largely, but like when we get to a point where we're able to create some sort of space for people to like enjoy, you know, the art form, the franchise, the memorabilia, like that creates memories. It creates a sense of belonging,
Yeah.
community. And I think that's probably why it's so fulfilling for people, right? Like,
Yeah.
because it's crucial community building. Being that, you know, Kaiju Brooklyn is taking off, like, what were the ultimate visions behind it?
Basically, you know, like I was saying, New York has not had a kaiju event here. And I noticed every time I did a local New York show, like a little show, like, I don't know, New York Comic Con or Anime NYC, even Five Points Fest, I always made really good money, like money that I couldn't make anywhere else, because it's New York and you have population density here, right? I mean, you could throw a rock and hit someone on the head, or a pizzeria, one or the other. And I kept noticing that like I did really well and people got excited. And I kept saying, there's something to that. Every year that went by, I did better and better. And I was like, there's something there. You know, I noticed that more so than in other cities. I mean, Florida was very good to me too. I'm not going to lie. And LA, again, it's traveling, right? And by the time you
Yeah.
travel, expenses add up. And, you know, these shows, you know, they become a little less profitable when you're digging into it with airfare and stuff. That was something that started it, right? And then 2022, the summer of that year, Japan Society, which is this historical society in Midtown Manhattan, did a special screening of Mothra 61 that sold out. I said,
Mm.
that's interesting, because a lot of people don't talk about that movie. And Peter Tatara, who used to run Anime NYC, became head of programming there. So I was friendly with him because of Anime NYC, which is our giant anime convention. He let me and Seismic Toys set up a table there to sell my artwork, and he sold his toys. I couldn't tell you how much, how I don't say how much money. I hate talking money, but we did really well. We did
Mm.
incredibly well. And all I had to do was we just set up a table, and I said, man, it'd be great to do more of these events because this is really successful. Fast forward that summer, I get the license to make Ultraman shirts. And my goal was to have the shirts ready for Anime NYC in November. What happened was I had a lot of notes on my first design.
Mm.
So I couldn't get my shirts made in time, unfortunately. And I was really excited. So by the time I got the shirts, it was like February or March of next year, which is crazy because I wanted them in November, right? Again, remember, I have the successful conventions in New York in the back of my head. Now I have this Ultraman shirts. Now you start seeing things are compounding. The next thing that happens was I have all these shirts now. I need a place to sell them, and I don't have any conventions until like the spring into summer. So I'm like freaking out. So I start doing Japan festivals. I do like one day anime shows, just anything to see like, okay, are people going to want to buy these shirts? Because I got the license. I'm so excited. I want to sell them. I sold them
Mm.
online. They did really well, but I said, I have to bring them to the people. So I reached out to a place called Japan Village, which is a huge Japanese place, which ties into Kaiju Brooklyn. And I said, you know, you guys have a great space. They have a book off, which everyone is familiar with, and that has kaiju stuff. And they have this great second floor with book off and a big open space. And I was like, hey guys, can I just set up a table there and sell my Japanese related merchandise? Unfortunately, nothing ever came of it. And
Oh.
when you fast forward to May, the writers go on strike. And the reason why I bring that up is because I work in TV and movies as a scenic artist. So literally the week we were wrapping out of our show, the writers go on strike. So I'm like, oh, okay, there goes our summer. A month later, I happened to meet a friend of mine who says to me, well, not that I met him, but I met someone through a friend of mine who works in a place called Industry City, which is 5 minutes from me. Now, for
Mm-hmm.
those that don't know, which is probably everyone, Industry City is a giant old manufacturing complex that's been converted to bars, retail, shopping, performance venues. It's microbrew, like tons of distilleries are in there. It's amazing. It's a chocolate factory in there. So, oh my God, there's a giant
Wow.
Mediterranean market. Japan Village is there. And I've always wanted to do something here because me and my wife love going there. June of last year, my friend says, you should meet my friend Anthony of BK1 Productions because he just got a space inside of there and he's looking to do events. I said, oh, okay. I go and I meet him, and I say to him, hey, like I want to do this Kaiju Brooklyn thing. And I want to preface this with around the same time, the actors go on strike in Hollywood. And I said, holy crap, like I'm going to be out of work for a while. And I tell you, I was out of work from last May up until this February. So I was barely hanging on financially by the end. So all those things, just like I said, they compounded. They also, it all coalesced to this moment where I met Anthony. I pitched him the idea and I said, let's look, I have this idea. I have years of connections with vendors and artists. I know Peter of Japan Society. I know, the Ultraman people. I got those connections. I know so many people, and I want to put everyone in a room together and see what happens. So we did it. We had 2 months to plan this show. And there were some criticisms of the first show, and I get it. People wanted a little bit more for their money, which we didn't hear too often. Like we didn't hear that a lot, but there were definitely some people chirping about that. I drove all this way just for like a vendor room and a screening. I'm like, yeah, but it's year one. I mean, it's like
what do you expect to happen the first year?
Yeah. So we had 2 months to prep this, and we said we have no time for a cosplay contest. We have no time for panels. We got no time for parties. We got no time for this. Let's just do this as a proof of concept and see what happens. Yeah. And boy, let me tell you, the first day, like not the first day, but the day of the event, it's raining. I'm like, oh my God, it's raining. Not a good sign. I'm looking outside the door. I don't see anybody. I'm like, what is going on? There's no line. This is horrible. What I didn't realize was the line was on the other side. They were out in the courtyard hanging out. So I have the video of the doors opening and like a parade of people. And we got close to 1,000 people. And for this
That's
event.
amazing.
It's totally amazing. It's totally the success that myself and the vendors had was unprecedented, to the point where my partner Anthony of BK1 said that was the single best day in his company's history. And on top of that, everyone in Industry City benefited because they all made record profits because of this show. Even the people that owned the plant store said we had the best day of our lives because of Kaiju Brooklyn. I was like, oh my God. So of course we were like, we got to come back for year two. But that's, and the vision was obviously, I'm an artist, and I create things. And for me, it was, not putting the art first, but doing something creative with it. I could just make a boring con. I can make a boring monthly toy show with Kaiju stuff, but it's going to get watered down and no one's going to care after month 2. It's going to be a series of diminishing returns. I wanted to do something unique and creative and interesting. And that's why this year there's a lot of experimentation. There's a whole lot of experimentation. Some of it, it's like, oh, wow, this is out of my comfort zone. But, I'm a person of a certain age, and I don't, I'm not a hip young kid. So I don't know what kids like, but I listen to them. I have to respond to that. And I have to think of the greater show and what that means. And if we have someone coming that is a YouTube star, for me, that wasn't even on my radar, but our friend Sal of Ultrazilla, he's awesome. He's organizing our panels. He said, you should invite Monster Island buddies. And I said, okay. And let me tell you,
Monster Island buddies.
Exactly. See, but that's my point, is like, I didn't know that. I keep my head down. I do my artwork. I do my thing. I don't have time to watch like a lot of stuff, and
right. Yeah.
Again, it was just something it wasn't on my radar, and because everyone, you do these shows, you got to have the guest, you got to have the actor, but people are watching YouTube now, man. Like that's where the future's going.
That's very thought-provoking though. Like the thought of like really stretching ourselves beyond our comfort zones. I think like as any type of artist or creator, like that's something important to reflect on, right?
Right. Yeah, I agree. And it served me well as an artist, and even in my relationships with friends, romantic partners, that's how I met my wife. Just going out of my comfort zone and not doing what I normally do. And I have to do that for the show. I mean, in the end, the show's success is the most important thing, and I can't compromise that in any way. And I can't water it down. I can't, I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. And I want to make it the Kaiju Super Bowl of New York. I want people to come here and, eventually want to make it. Right now, it's a day and a half. Like this year, we're doing a VIP kickoff party with a Kaiju inspired DJ, Mapping the Bright Human. Shout out to him. Then at a sake distillery, and then we're doing a special panel with Jeff Gomez of Starlight Runner, who's the person responsible for bringing Ultraman here in the States. And then we're doing a screening of Mega Monster Battle to the movie. We're giving out swag bag with a ton of cool stuff. We have t-shirts made. And then the next day is the show with, you know, panels all day, cosplay contest, after party, screening, vendor hall, artist. It's going to be insanity, but that's what I want. And
so
you know,
clearly a huge expansion compared to year one. So hopefully
yeah.
those who wanted more last year will look at this year and be like, yes, this is...
Yeah. And on top of that, with only a $5 hike in ticket prices. So you're getting, you know, for $25, you're getting a hell of a lot for your money. You know, and for a city like New York, $25 is really, really cheap.
So that's going to be May 31st and June 1st, right?
Correct.
It's going to be exciting. I cannot wait to see how it goes. I'm really excited that you've tapped into Monster Island Buddies. Monster Island Buddies is a wonderful human being, has been on the show once already. We've had a great conversation, met him at G-Fest as well.
Right.
Fun human being. Fun human being.
Nice.
So... because I am nerdy, I really love just tapping into people's histories as Godzilla fans. So obviously that's another one of the reasons I invited you here, is because I just wanted to get to know, like, where it all began for you specifically. So how were you first introduced to Godzilla? Like, how did that come about?
Well, here in New York, we had, you know, back in the day, my God, in the 80s and 90s, we only had so many channels, right? And every Saturday and Sunday and like around the holidays, like Thanksgiving, there'd always be Godzilla movies on. And it'd be a double feature of a Godzilla movie and a Kung Fu movie. So I'm obsessed with both. I'm obsessed
Do you remember those double features? Yes.
Yeah, so I am obsessed with Asian cinema. I bleed Hong Kong action movies, and like I could do a whole convention on Hong Kong action movies alone. Like that's how much I love that stuff. And that's like, I'd love to do that next. But first things first, answer your question. So that's how I was exposed to Godzilla, was basically with the double feature. And during that time, Bandai was making those first vinyls, you know, the first Godzilla vinyl toys. So I would go to this comic shop in Staten Island, where I'm from, and they would have all the Bandai vinyls from all the movies. Like the first one I ever got was the first Bandai Godzilla 85, the little 6-inch one with the weird face. Like I still have that. And that was my first Godzilla toy. And then they started getting all the Bandai toys from the 90s movies. So I'd go there and get the Godzilla versus Ghidorah 91 series. I'd get the Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, Godzilla Mechagodzilla 93 vinyl series. I get the Space Godzilla, Destroyer. I mean, when Destroyer came out, that's when I went to G-Con in 96. But so I would go every week to this comic shop, and I would tell the guy, hey, I want a Minya toy. He would say, okay, I'll order you one. And he would order me a Bandai Minya. This was like in 1992 or 3, which is, or like even earlier than that, which is like unheard of. Like, and I'd say, I want a Baragon toy. And he would order me a Baragon toy. And I did this every week. So I would go to this place, see Hobby Effects. What's the other one? There's the other Japanese magazine. And I would open it up and find like Super Sentai Jetman, which is why I love Jetman. I'd find out about who Ultra 7 was and the Ultra Brothers. And I would say, I don't know who these guys are, but they are so cool. And they look so much cooler than American superheroes because their uniforms match, but different colors. Like I loved all that stuff. You know, and I also love comics as well. So it was just, everything just sort of like fed into each other. And, you know, Godzilla and all that stuff just really struck a chord because, you know, I loved military stuff as a kid, and Godzilla was always fighting like toy tanks and stuff. Well, not toy, but you know what I'm saying? And it just, all these things, it was like all the interest I had in my life were in Godzilla movies, except for the Kung Fu stuff, of course.
So I think that's a great history. Like, purely for my own amusement, what was that first Godzilla film? Do you remember?
You know, I always go back to Hedorah. Like, for some reason, that strikes me as the first one I've seen.
That's an interesting first one. Honestly.
That and Monster Zero. But the funny thing is, I don't know how I had all this stuff on Staten Island, because it's Staten Island. It's the Lost Borough. But there was a video store that had VHS tapes of the original Mothra, Rodan, Gorith, which is a lost one, Mysterium.
Wow, yeah. That's a hard one to find.
Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, Mothra vs. Godzilla. So my mom would just take these, I'd rent them and she would tape them, and then I'd have them on VHS.
What a good mom.
Oh, she's great. Yeah.
So was this like, were you like early teens at this time? Like, was this like kind of like where you were starting to like branch out a little bit? Like, because like it's interesting because many people were introduced to Godzilla when like I had one person recently who was introduced to Godzilla at 3 years old,
Right.
and I was like, that's woo. For me,
Yeah.
it was like 8. So like for
Yeah.
you, was it like single digits, teenage
Yeah.
years? What was it?
So I was 5, I think. Yeah, 5 when Godzilla 85 came out. By that point, I knew who Godzilla was. So that tells you
Mhm.
something. So I was probably like
Yeah.
3, and I was, hardcore Godzilla up until like the Heisei era, and the movie stopped, and
Mhm.
then there was no new material until I got obsessed with the Gamera trilogy. Like that is like my favorite
Mm.
of all time.
Mhm.
And then I kind of like went dormant again. But in my teens, I got more into the Hong Kong action stuff because when the Godzilla stuff started to end, like John Woo movies started pouring over
Yeah.
into the States. And that's when I got really into Hong Kong action and, Jackie Chan before he broke out here, like all these guys that broke out here, I was watching all that stuff. So my teens were mostly the Hong Kong action stuff. And I was always into Godzilla. Don't get me wrong. The Millennium stuff I
Yeah.
loved at the time. We won't talk about 98 and, Final Wars. I remember buying a VCD in Chinatown and watching that and just watching it in Chinese and having no idea what's going on. Even now with subtitles, I don't know what's going on.
But you were having a good time still, though,
Yeah,
right?
having a good time. And then, like most things, it's like it goes dormant. And then I kind of went dormant and, started my career and I was pursuing music and stuff like that. And then I didn't come back around to it hardcore until like 2014, because that's when
Yeah.
the movie came out. So I credit that movie with, reigniting my passion. And now here we are talking, because of that, which is crazy.
10 years later, hard to believe it's been 10 years since
It's
that film came
yeah,
out.
it's been an insane journey to go from a fan artist to running my own kaiju convention and making Ultraman shirts. It's like, oh my God, this is insane.
Like, I mean, it's a full circle moment, right? Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
recently just went through this with like the comic book stuff. Like, I
Yeah.
had,
Congratulations on that.
thank
That's
you.
unbelievable.
I like it's just one of those situations where you don't really you don't think that you will get enmeshed in a franchise that you love a lot, but then like something does happen and it's like, wow, kid me is just sitting in disbelief back in the early 90s being sad because he wants to do something.
Right.
But
Yeah.
so speaking of 90s,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you went to the first G-Con,
I
right?
did. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like around the time Godzilla vs. Destroyer came out.
Yeah.
What was the, if you can recall, like what was the general feel? Were people like depressed, like that Godzilla was coming? Like what was the feel of it? Like I just want to know, what's the bird's eye view?
I was 16 because so they had this Godzilla vs. Destroyer toys out, which means that was like 90s. Destroyer came out what, late 95?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So that had to be, I don't remember the date, but it was at the New Yorker Hotel behind Madison Square Garden. I walked in, and you know what? For a new show, it was pretty tight. I remember Teruyoshi Nakano was standing behind me. He's the guy that took over for Subaraya in the
Mm-hmm.
effects. So he's standing behind me. I went, "Oh, hey, man!" And I had him sign like this print I bought from Bob Eggleton's wife, and he signed it. And I'm like, "Hey, thanks, man." And then Hiroshi Koizumi was giving a talk, and I remember I asked him a question. And I said, "What do you think about the '70s movies?" And then I remember buying like the Destroyer adult toy and not burning Godzilla. I still, to this day, I kick myself because they had the Meltdown toy, the orange one, the translucent, for $50, right?
Oh.
I said, I'm not going to buy it. Like a month later, it was selling for $600. So to this day, I still kick myself for not buying that.
And I
But
can't imagine how hard that must be to find today.
you know what? I had it in my I went to G Fest in 2019, and they had that auction, and they were
Mm.
selling it for $100, and it's going once, going twice, and I didn't raise my hand. I hesitated. I don't know. I just was like,
Oh my
the moment
goodness.
passed. There could have been more. I don't remember. I was just so like overwhelmed.
Oh yeah, I remember my first time at G-Fest. I went to G-Fest in 2007. I had to go because I was on a panel, which was super intimidating. Like I was literally almost in my 20s just doing this panel for the first time,
Right.
and I cannot forget how it was exciting, but it was also so like socially taxing. Like I was just like, people love the same thing I do. I cannot compute what's going on.
I remember my first G Fest. It got to the point where I made so many friends. Had so much fun that I would get in on Thursday and by Thursday night I'd lose my voice. Like that's how bad it was. And
Oh,
I would,
wow.
yeah, yeah, because I was talking so much because I had so like growing up in high school, I wasn't like, yeah, I was like the heavy metal kid, but I hung out with everyone, and that's how I am now. Like I just talk to everyone, whatever your religious belief is, your gender, like none of it matters to me as long as you're like a cool person and you're not a jerk.
Yeah.
And that's how I am now, and that's why I'm able to do the things I do because I don't discriminate against, you know, a group of people or anybody. And that goes for people at G-Fest because, as we know, like
Yeah.
there could be some gatekeeping with some of the older guard. There could be, you know, you know, just hard personalities to sort of deal with. And you know, but I was fortunate that I met a lot of really great people, and you know, G-Fest is, it's a blast.
I think that's a very refreshing take. I mean, I don't think people quite realize, like, we kind of act like the Godzilla fandom is like this niche fandom, but the truth is, over the last decade, I would say that it's broken through and become quite large. And I think once we just realize that, like, there are so many people from so many different walks of life that take something away from this, like, that makes it all the more meaningful, right? That's actually one reason I do this show, is because, like, we are getting that perspective, like, from people of very diverse backgrounds and experiences, so on and so forth. And we all have that entry point. We all have that thing that made us fall in love with Godzilla. Why is it? Like, what brings us together about this character and franchise that's so significant? Does that make sense?
No, it does. I
Yeah.
remember the first like G-Fest. Like I have a whole like gaggle of new friends now because of G-Fest and the fandom in general of like-minded people. And I think it's just like, you know, being a Godzilla fan, especially in my time, you know, my childhood, it's like you didn't meet other Godzilla fans. Everyone thought I was the weirdo. I was like the Godzilla guy in a class full of Star Wars fans. So when you go and you meet like-minded people, it's you know, pop culture fandom. I've been saying for a while, you know, religion has taken a huge downturn for well, very obvious reasons in our society. Buddhism's cool though. I do like Buddhism. But and no offense to our practicing Catholics out there, because I was raised Catholic. Anyway,
Mhm.
going off on a
I
weird
also
tangent
was
here.
raised Catholic partially.
Exactly. And then when you get older, you're like, oh, wait a minute. This is I don't want to make this a controversial podcast. Point being is that I don't think it's a coincidence that pop culture fandoms have gotten as crazy and toxic as they have because religion and that whole community thing of like, you know, being out in like a park full of your friends or going to a bowling alley or doing things that people used to do is gone. Now
Hmm.
we live on the internet and we have these Marvel movies, right? We have pop culture conventions. You know,
Yeah,
this stuff
yeah,
has taken the place of religion, whether people realize it or not. So
yeah.
when you know, we practice in the House of Kaiju, right? As stupid as that sounds, right? Right? And
Could
then
that be the title of this episode? The House of Kaiju. I love
yeah,
it.
right. So we're praying in the House of Kaiju by yourself. Like I'd go to Chinatown by myself or with with my cousin, buy some bootleg kaiju movies. Like I go home and watch them, and I had no one to share it with. Now all of a sudden you have two people, three people, 100 people, 1,000 people to share it with. It's like, oh my
Yeah,
god, you know. So people like, you know, they like finds like, and I think it's that shared communal experience of common interest, right?
absolutely.
And the thing that's you know, when I started my fan art journey back in 2015 at selling at shows, I was like, man, it's just gonna be like old white dudes buying my artwork, and they're gonna age out, and that's it. I have to tell you, every year that I do shows, especially in New York, that crowd gets younger and younger and more female. And I just did an anime convention that did really well out, and not one of my customers was an adult white male. They were very young kids of all different ethnicities. And that was
Wow.
really refreshing to see that this stuff is breaking through the way it is. And that's how it's
Mm,
going, you know,
yeah.
and you need that. You need that,
A healthy community always has diverse voices, right?
of
And
course.
I think so long as the Godzilla fandom has that, yeah, like there's the gatekeepers, right? Like we were talking about, but as
Right.
long as the Godzilla fandom has that, it's going to flourish. And I think that because of the MonsterVerse, Godzilla minus one, Shin Godzilla, like we are at a point in our community where we are on cloud nine, right? Like
Yeah.
it's been wild.
We won an
So
Oscar. We won an Oscar. And I tell you,
we won a
yeah.
damn Oscar.
Yeah. when they won, so I grew up like a Yankee fan and a New York Giants fan, and not so much lately, but I remember when the Yankees would win, I would throw my hands up around my dad and like tears would come out. I'm like, oh my God. I did that when Godzilla won. Like I stayed up. I was on the edge of my seat. My ass don't even touch the couch. I was so nervous. And
I
then
was tipsy.
right? Yeah. And then when they won, my wife tried to film it, but she couldn't get me. But I like threw my hands up. I started like tearing up. I was just like, I couldn't go to sleep. All my friends, we were texting each other because we waited so long. I mean, Godzilla has been at the forefront of effects work. The problem is that Toho just never went to digital soon enough, and they got left behind. And now they came back and showed, crazily enough, like ironically enough, they showed Hollywood like, oh, we're going to do this awesome, and it's going to look better than anything you guys have done with a fraction of the budget, and we could show you a more proficient way to do it. So I love all that. I love it was like a big FU to like the Hollywood studio system.
No, I thought that was like again, like Godzilla winning an Oscar. We all won an Oscar. Like it felt very validating as a Godzilla fan to be able to witness that, right?
Yeah.
And so speaking of films, like obviously as you've grown as a Godzilla fan over the years, like I'm sure films have risen to your favorites, or maybe they've fallen off the list. Like what would you say are your top 3 Godzilla films right now, and why?
So that's changed. Okay. When I was a kid, it was always Monster Zero, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and Terra Mechagodzilla.
Good selections.
Yeah, because I grew up with the Showa era stuff. So then there was Biollante, Destroyer, Mechagodzilla 93. Okay. Then it became GMK, Tokyo SOS, which I saw in the theaters, by the way, when it debuted in New York in 03.
I'm so sad that I didn't get to see that.
Yeah, there was like 5 of us in the theater, but it was amazing. And then -1, -1 is amazing. So, but what's funny is as I gotten older, like Mothra vs. Godzilla has become my favorite because the 64 suit is my absolute favorite Godzilla suit. And as I gotten older, I've grown to really love 85. That's an unbelievable movie and very underrated. I've grown to love, what else is there? Ghidorah, yeah, that's about it.
No, those are great selections, though.
Yeah.
Like, I know. Well, so whenever someone asks me what my favorites are, like they usually expect me to like just rattle off a Mothra film because Mothra is my favorite kaiju. However, Godzilla vs. Biollante still to this day is probably my favorite Godzilla film, simply because of the atmosphere of it all. Now, don't get me wrong. Tokyo SOS is probably, it's kind of tied with it because it's one of my favorite stories, my favorite representations of Mothra. Like it's like I think it covers all the bases, but like even to this day, like now that -1 is out, like I find my top 3 list, depending on my mood, is always shifting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now it's like Mothra vs. Godzilla -1 and 85. Those are my top 3 right now. And I don't think there's a coincidence. I think as I've gotten older, I'm, as for example, like as a kid, I watched Megalon, but I didn't love it. And Godzilla's Revenge, I didn't like it. Even when I was a kid, I was like, what is this kid crap, And I've always liked the more serious stuff. Kind of like we were talking about with Ultraman earlier. Like I like the more serious, darker stuff. And as I gotten older and learned about the world, I realized what Godzilla is a symbol of. The first film is basically a documentary. It's a horror movie. And the first film is basically, Godzilla punishing man's folly, and as I gotten older, I realized what we do to the planet, what we do to each other. And what I love about -1, there's a great shot where the tanks are firing at him and he's covered in the smoke. And then his head comes out of that smoke and you see the anger. And it looked like an angry God about to enact its revenge on humanity in that scene. Like everything about Godzilla was summed up in that one expression in his face. And whereas, for me, like people love superhero Godzilla, and that's cool. And people love, Godzilla in the 90s has just like a walking nuclear nightmare. But I love Godzilla as the angry God punishing humanity. But I also love the Heisei Gamera as like the Rocky Balboa who protects the planet at all costs and will sacrifice himself to save the planet. And even with his little heel turn in 99, he still had that connection to humanity, which I
Yeah.
love.
So the late regarding like how a lot of people tend to gravitate toward like the darker stories too. Like I think that's why so many people are like gravitate to the Gamera trilogy, because the Gamera trilogy really carved out its own footing. And not to overuse the word iconic, but it is very iconic.
I agree, and I think that's why I can do with superhero Godzilla from the 70s and even in the legendary films, because to me that's Gamera. It's always been Gamera, even though he started as this villain in the Showa era. I love Gamera 2. Gamera 2 is like my favorite kaiju movie of all time, believe it or not, because
You know,
he.
people will eviscerate me for saying this, but I actually like Gamera 2 more than 3.
I agree. Yes, I never had people like say like talk smack to me about that. A lot of people say, yeah, I could see that, and some people say, yeah, mine is Gamera 96 as well, because 99 there is a little bit of a shortage of kaiju action, which whatever, but with the kaiju action you get's amazing. And
Yeah,
there are like,
absolutely.
it's a little ambiguous. It is a little ambiguous, and people, it does have the ending that very Sopranos-esque, just stops,
Oh, I do love the ending. Ooh. Ooh,
yeah,
I do
you
love the
know.
ending.
I do love the ending, but I could see where Gamma vs. Legion is basically, if you watch it, it's almost a beat for beat remake of Godzilla versus Hedorah. As I've gotten older, I've really grown to love the dark tone of that movie. Aside from the
Yes.
flying scene, when I watch it as an adult, I realize it's very similar to Gamera 2 with, superhero aspect of the lead kaiju, the multiple forms, Godzilla and Gamera teaming up with the military, Gamera looking at the military the way Godzilla does at the end, and they both leave. And there's a lot of similarities there. So I
You could write a think piece about the similarities between Gamera 2 and Godzilla vs. Hedorah.
I should. Yeah,
Do
I
it.
really should. Yeah,
Do
I should.
I think you should. I would read the hell out of that.
Yeah.
So so if we were to like kind of narrow things down beyond just the movies, like what characters, like human characters, alien characters, and or kaiju specifically have you tended to gravitate toward as favorites over the years?
That's a really good question. I've always liked Detective Shindo in um, Good Ghidorah. I've also liked, believe it or not, Rondo. Is it Rando or Rondo from Shin Godzilla?
Oh, yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
like him a lot. I really, really like him. Um, I'm trying to think, like Nick Adams, of course. There was definitely a lot of like Akira Takarada's characters, like a Multiverse Godzilla or Fuji. Like he always played like the straight laced dude, and I'm kind of like I guess a straight laced guy. Um, but as I've gotten older, it changed a little bit. Like I love what's his name, Yuki from Space Godzilla. He's the best part of that
Oh,
movie.
oh my God, Yuki.
Yeah, yeah, he's great. I really got attached to Tachibana in -1, and I'll tell you why.
Yes.
Well, -1, there's, my God, it's take your pick, right? Of the rich
Focus
characters.
on any character, and the character is
Yeah,
going to be amazing.
yeah. I didn't identify. There was just a line in that brought me to tears every time I saw it, because I was dealing with terrible, terrible tendonitis in my knees, basically from overuse. I was going to the gym every day. Like I said, we were on strike. I was going to the gym every day, and I just worked my legs out a little too much. And I had like crippling tendonitis where I couldn't even sit down. Like I couldn't do this.
Oh,
I couldn't draw. I couldn't do anything. It was just affecting my life. I felt really depressed. I couldn't walk. I couldn't
wow.
stand. I had to keep sitting down. And the holidays are coming around, and I was just miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And it started around Kaiju Brooklyn 1, believe it or not. Like I was in a lot of pain. Legs were really tight. So when
Mm-hmm.
-1 came out, I was just down in the dumps, and I saw the movie 4 times. I was out of work for 9 months, just all these things. And when Tachibana comes at the end, he sort of like has like a character turn, right, in that movie, where he hates. Oh my God, what's the lead character's name?
Shikijima. He
Yeah,
lets that hate go.
exactly. And I think his character, I had that hate and that anger. Like I couldn't every day, like the depression and the anger and all this stuff. And when he tells him to live, oh my God, every time I watch that scene,
Oh
I
God, yeah,
personalize it so hard. And I was just
yeah.
like, I need to live. I can't live in this depression of that I can't walk. And it's like, you know, Donnie, it's like I'd go pick up my wife at work and I'm sitting in a car and I'm looking at like old men walking faster than me. Now it's been almost 5 or 6 months, and now I'm just getting used to walking downstairs again. I'm like, I did everything right, you know, and you just go through your head, and
Hmm.
then having -1 come when it did, just it was so deep. It was so personal for me. And
Yeah.
thank you for asking me that question, because it really, it was something that I had, you know, thinking about for a while, and, you know, verbalizing why I like that scene so much makes more sense to me, you know, with Tachibana having that
Yeah.
anger in him and letting it go.
Well, and that's why I ask these questions,
Yeah.
because we don't often articulate or self-examine the way these films or characters really impact us. Like I know, similar to what you were just describing about Tachibana, like there's a certain point in the film after that exchange that he has with Shikajima, where, like, you know, the main character's flying in the plane, like trying to make the decision of like, do I end my life or do I keep on living?
Yeah.
And like that moment where you can see in his eyes that he makes the decision to continue living. Like, I mean, as someone who has had a very like challenging history with mental health and ideation, like seeing that person represented, that mental health represented, was so, like, I felt seen, you know, like it felt
Right.
very much revealing. And I think that's why we often gravitate to this franchise, is because this, you know, franchise, we see ourselves in these characters, in the kaiju sometimes even, you
Yeah.
know, and I
100%.
don't think we should take that lightly at all, beyond any stretch of the imagination.
And it's funny because I never saw myself in Godzilla. I mean, the reason why I didn't like Multiverse Godzilla as a kid was because he loses at the end. To this day, I'm like, I can't watch him fall into the ocean covered in the web, you know. But I never saw myself as like, you know, when I was younger, I was really overweight. I was almost like 300 pounds, and I just looked terrible. Girls didn't like me, and you know, for a boy like for me, like that was hard because I saw my friends had girlfriends and I never did, and it was all these like things that were, you know, and I sort of retreated into the Godzilla stuff and the Kung Fu stuff and saw myself as like in my head what I should look like, which is what I look like now, which is kind of hilarious. So, you know, for me, Godzilla was always just an escape. It was never like, you know, I'm this big plundering monster that destroys everything. Even though I am a giant man, I'm like 6'3" and I'm a pretty big dude. I saw myself more in Gamera and
Hmm.
in the Ultraman characters. I mean, come on, like that's a whole other world that we haven't even
Well,
touched upon. But
the interesting thing is, my next question is, how has Godzilla shaped you into who you are today? It almost sounds like that escape and that survival through the escape itself
yes,
was
yeah,
one of those ways.
yeah, and honestly, it kept me drawing. Even though I stopped drawing Godzilla, kung fu movies is what kept me drawing because I wanted to be a comic artist as a kid. And when I was coming out of high school and college, Marvel was going bankrupt. No one knew if they were going to make it another year. And I said, well, this doesn't seem promising. And you know, I had a connection in the film business, and that's why I got into scenic painting because it's like, well, it's a union, and I could retire, and you
Hmm.
know, and to this day, I don't. Sometimes I wonder, should I have done this or that? But then I don't know if I would have had some of the opportunities, the amazing opportunities that I've had in my lifetime. If
Right.
I, you know, like you always wonder about the road not taken, but I just would have been another comic artist. I mean, my hero growing up was Todd McFarlane. I wanted to be a Todd McFarlane entrepreneur type, and I guess I'm kind of doing that in a way, you know, and you know, yeah, it shaped me, that it kept me creative. It kept me
Well, and
engaged.
this is proof for you too that a person can do multiple things in life.
Yes.
And multiple things can be enriching. Like I have this conversation with, because I teach for a living. I have this
Right.
conversations with my college students all the time, and they always just feel like they're so stuck in like one thing. And I'm like, yeah, like do that thing, but like that thing can also sustain other things that you love to do. Like
100%.
if I didn't teach, like teaching is what helps me sustain doing this, and writing for a career. Like writing has boomed a little bit more for me than it used to recently, but like still, like sometimes we have to create like little pots of sustainability,
Yes.
in order to keep ourselves going with the things that we love to do.
Yeah, you need
So,
that. You need the release. You need distractions. And I've always been big on like my career is not going to define me. The things, my actions will define me. The things that I do and love will define me. Not that I clock in and paint sets for a TV show. Like,
Right.
that's cool and all, and everyone thinks it's a cool job, and it really is. Like, all my friends work for the city and do other like financial stuff, and here I am like working on the stuff that everybody in the world watches, and
Hmm.
that's cool, you know. But some people in my business can take it a little too seriously, and I never did. And you know, like I said, last year I had no work for 9 months because the business went away. But you know what I did? I did a lot of conventions. I did conventions every month. I created
Yeah.
my own goddamn convention just to give myself another income stream. So if I didn't have that, I would have really been screwed, you
Yeah.
know. But because I
Yeah.
had that, and if you look at any artist, not very few artists follow like a straight path. You know, they do
Right.
everything. And like something like Kaiju Brooklyn is another creation for me. It's something I can create and mold and shape to what I want it to be, with input from, you know, people that have really good ideas. And, you know,
Yeah.
my partner Anthony, he's awesome, and he's the one that suggested the VIP party, and let's do it. I'm a collaborator too. I work in a collaborative business. Like, let's team up, let's work together. So, you know,
Yeah.
if I didn't like, so at my job, I'm what you call a scenic charge. So I run the paint department. And for years, I didn't want to do that. I'd never wanted it. My boss, who I loved, was retiring, and he goes, I think you'd be really good at it. And my boss is a legend in my business. He's so respected. And I said, well, this guy who's so respected and loved and talented thinks of this of me, he sees something.
Mm.
So let me try it.
Yeah.
And me being put in charge of this job a few years ago, uh, it gave me the confidence to pull off something like Kaiju Brooklyn, because I knew I can. Now it's like, okay, well, I run the paint department on a big TV show that gets millions of views. I could put on a Kaiju convention. It's really easy.
Yeah.
So it fed in. So my point being is that the day job fed into the side hustle, and the side hustle feeds into the day job. And it, like you said, it
It's connected.
intertwines. And I think your students, if they see that, if they know it all feeds into the same pot, I think they'd be more enlightened to pursue stuff.
Right. And sometimes it takes that representation from like that person who believed in you, and simply just having that belief from someone, right? Like
Yeah.
that can take a person so far. So now I do have a couple of final questions for you. This one is purely indulgent. Do you like collecting? What do you collect?
Well, on my desk, I have the new YMSF Rodan. Okay.
Love it.
I have the new Atragon. Okay. I have this custom Trunks figure. I have
Trunks. I used to be like my anime husband a long time ago.
Yeah, he's the guy I wanted to be when I grew up. But look, this is a custom one with from the BoJack movie. I bought the vest and the hair from like a customizer. So I waited a long time because that was my favorite Dragon Ball movie. Then I have like this Ultraman toy, and I have this vinyl, and let me see. Oh, over here, that's my display case with all my like Sofubi and my, I only have like two or three X plus, but I have tons of Godzilla toys.
Finally expanding into Sofubis, and I haven't done like I haven't really gotten far into, because they're kind of expensive. But like I go through like these phases. So like lately I've been in like, you can't really see up above, but like I have like a bunch of plushes. I've been really obsessed with like the Squishmallow line and like the plushes and stuff like that. But now I'm like kind of transitioning into Sofubi, and I'm pretty excited, although I do not at all have the space to sustain that habit. So
well, it's funny because I was always in the Bandai stuff, and then I got the Sofubi bug when I bought the Marmot Parababy Godzilla 68 and Anguirus 68. And I love that they're screen accurate but stylized at the same time, like chibi almost. And I got those things for like $60 each, maybe
I love
$40
things. Anything that's chibi-ish
yeah
wins me over. I will go broke.
like this right here from Last Bastion. That's a little bit more chibi-ish than the Parababy.
It's so cute though.
Yeah, it's great.
So cute.
But then I got the bug like in 2015 to start buying all these Parababies. And I just got the tail end of when those things were still relatively cheap. Because after that, those things shot up in value. And then all these designer dudes from China and Japan, like Nag Toy and Medicom and Kaiju One, Spiral, all these like high-end Sophie stuff started popping up. And now people are like bitching because they can't buy the damn things because they're so like hard to get. So I kind of like got the tail end of when they were still reasonable. Now it's like they're so exclusive, they're so expensive. God bless anyone that gets into that stuff now.
Yeah, anybody who has the patience and the financial wherewithal, like, all the more power to you, right?
Yeah, seriously.
So, my final question, and it's an important one.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for Godzilla fans who may be new to the franchise? And it's kind of a two-part question.
Okay.
And do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
That's a tricky one because there's not a coherent tone like the Marvel movies, right? You could be like, start with Iron Man and work your way to Endgame and then walk away, right? You could do that. Stop after Endgame because you can be really disappointed. I would say start with Gojira. You have to start with the original, and from there you could literally work your way through the series. Maybe skipping 98, but you could literally work your way through the series and just find out what you like best. But what I typically do for newbies is I say, all right, start with Gojira. You go to Multiverse Godzilla. If you're feeling a little goofy, go to Monster Zero and Ghidorah, just so you have the Ghidorah fill. I like Destroy All Monsters, but I'm not a huge fan of that one. Same thing with Hedorah. I love it, but I think that'll turn a lot of people off. That's what you watch when you're fully indoctrinated. Then I would say
it's very niche, yes.
Very niche. But then I would say like 85 Shin -1. And then after that, you just sort of work your way back into the series. I say you go a little bit backwards, give yourself a taste of a little bit and see what you like. And then, either just watch it straight through, or you could do the Heisei, you could just do the Millennium films, you could do the Legendary films, but you have to start with the original. You have to. There's no way to get into it.
Yeah, you gotta have that like context of like the the gravity behind the character, right? So what about artists? Like, what advice do you have for artists?
Are we talking like kaiju artists or just artists in general?
Artists in general.
Well, it's tough now, Donny, because of AI. I don't know where it's going to go, and unless the government steps in to put guardrails around this, especially with copyright stuff, it's going to get a little messy out there. I don't know how it's going to affect my career. I know the writers and actors were being affected by it.
Yeah. Even in education, it's something that's plaguing us. So
yeah, it's everywhere now. Everyone's talking about it because, and I don't, not to go off on an AI tangent, but it's like, you're really going to displace billions of people and not take away their jobs. What are these people going to do? Where are they going to go? Like, where's the basic, give us universal basic income. So, 2 years ago, I would have said something a little bit different. But what I will say is don't stop. Don't ever stop, because art isn't just drawing. Art is also floral design. Art is also window decorations. Art is also home decor, interior design, production design, game design, creating events, art's everywhere you look, and you don't limit yourself to just one thing, and believe in yourself. It helps to have a support system. So you'll want to find people around you that don't drag you down or discourage you. You want to be around people that encourage you. Arts, as you might know, Donny, are not very protected or funded here in the States. Unlike, I don't know, Russia, where everyone knows how to draw, and Asia and France and everywhere else, pretty much, except for maybe like Antarctica. And it's an
it's true.
It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle, and if you're not in it 100% to make it as a professional artist, then don't do it at all. If you want to just be a hobbyist and just do it on weekends or just to relax, by all means do it. If you don't care about making money, do it. But if you're going to do it for a living, you have to sacrifice a lot. Not too much, but maybe don't get married right out of high school if you want to be an artist. Just a little hunch. Stuff like that. Just basic life things. Know how to run a
commit
business.
to it.
Exactly. It's commitment and discipline. Like at work, when I started the fan art thing, that began my journey to Kaiju Brooklyn and the Ultraman license with the shirts. I just did fan art, and all I did was I'd work a 10-hour day on a set painting. I'd come home, and draw on my computer or my sketchbook for 20 minutes minimum, hour and a half maximum. And I shut my computer off every day at 7. I don't quite have that schedule anymore now that I'm doing the shirts, and I've kind of said a lot of what I wanted to say with the Godzilla stuff, and I'm kind of turning into the Ultra stuff. And now if I do fan art, it's not that it's few and far between. It's, now I'm getting commission work, and I'm, there's other projects I'm doing I can't talk about. So it's kind of shifted. Yeah, believe me, you'll see it, because I'll be really.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, I'll be really belligerent about it. Hey, look at me, because that's what you have to do.
Hey, another thing, as an artist or as a writer, you have to self-promote.
Yes,
like it feels so selfish because we're conditioned to feel selfish.
Yes.
Over self-promotion, but like in our society, if we don't, then we're not going to be seen.
Yes, my old art teacher Sal Catalano, legend in the business, said, "Let people know you're open. Let people know you're open for business." I said, "Okay," and that's what I did. And you can't be shy. I mean, yeah, it is weird, like talking about me, like all this, and I'm like, oh, it's so weird, but I did.
It's a conditioning to unlearn, right? It's a conditioning to unlearn.
Yeah.
So, John, this has been such a great conversation. I have had so much fun.
Yeah, me too.
Where can people find your stuff?
First and foremost, my website, roboseven.com. It's ROBO, the number 7.com. Instagram, I'm like the most active. Like my website's there, but it really needs like an overhaul and an update. It's been a little while, but go to my Instagram. Yeah, but go to my Instagram, Roboseven, ROBOSEVEN, and KaijuBrooklyn.com, and you could find all the Kaiju Brooklyn stuff you could ever hope to find there. You could find our social media, which is just at Kaiju Brooklyn on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter or X if you're on that, it's just at Kaiju BK. That's pretty much where you can find me, where I'm lurking in the shadows.
I love it. And I will have all those links in the comment section below, everyone. So please go check out both John's work and Kaiju Brooklyn. And of course, go to the convention. Like,
yeah,
please.
Please.
Like, it is coming up very soon. Make your last minute decision and just go. Just do it. So check it out. And don't forget, Growing Up With Godzilla premieres in the first and third Sunday of every month, if I have my crap together. And last but not least, don't forget to keep standing tall, my friends. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.